So once you've got your blank page open, at the top of the page you're going to write what I've already written on the board, value scales and shading techniques. Can someone tell me, remind me, what is value? With a hand, please. What is value? Does anybody remember? We talked about it with our monochromatic silhouettes. What's value, EJ?
The lightness or darkness.
Excellent. The lightness or darkness of a color. So we're going to be creating some value scales. All right? Now, for now, I want you, when you finish your titles, I want you to put your pencils down because you don't have a ruler yet, and you're going to need a ruler for this assignment. So for now, you're just going to watch me. We're going to look at 5 different shading techniques, and we're going to create a value scale for each shading technique. Can anybody guess what a value scale is? What do you think is a value scale? You understand?
Different shades and tints of one color.
Yeah, but it goes from, it's a scale, so where do you think it goes from? From what to what?
It goes from dark to light.
Or light to dark, absolutely. Behind Ben is a value scale on that backboard there, and that's similar to what we're going to be creating. So when I'm finished my demo, so all pencils should be down, when I finish my demo, you're going to do the exact same thing that I'm doing now. So I'm going to start by I'm going to create 5 different value scales. And in order to do it quickly, I'm just going to create all 5 lines at once. So I've just left a little bit of space in between. Now they don't have to be perfect, okay? This is just an exercise, so it's really not important to make sure that every line is completely parallel or that they're all exactly the same. It's more important to just make sure that you're getting it done. Alright, so I'm almost done my 5 value scales. I just have to close them on the other end here. And then I need to create 5 sections for 5 different values within. So I'm going to go ahead with my ruler. 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's okay if some of the sections are bigger than others or smaller. Alright, and once I've done that, I've got some sections that are really big. That's okay. Once I've done that, I'm going to label each section. And I've put on the board the 5 different techniques we're going to use. So I'm going to start with tonal. Okay, and I'm just labeling it right underneath the word, right underneath the scale. Now we're going to go from light to dark. So we need to have 5 different values or 5 different lightnesses or darknesses using only pencil. How do I get a darker version of pencil, Adira? You press harder. There are some pencils that come with darker lead, but we're just going to press harder. So I'm going to start with tonal. Now tonal is a very sort of smooth way to shade. It's shading in small sections, and it's shading usually in one direction. So I'm pressing very, very lightly here. All right. Now I'm ready to move on to my next value. So this value needs to be a little bit darker. So I could go ahead and do the exact same thing I did for my first value. Then I could stop, go back to the beginning and go over it one more time, and that will automatically make it darker. Or, as Adira said, I could press a little bit harder. Okay, so you can hopefully see a difference between my first and my second value. I'm going to continue now. So this value is going to have to be a little bit darker. All right, why do you think we need to practice getting darker values? How could we use value in our drawings? Yeah. Yeah, for shadows. And if you think about it, when we draw things and we try to make them look 3D, we have to use multiple values to do it. So I'm now on my 4th value, and now I can really start pressing harder. All right, and then my final value, this is when I can press so hard, I don't have to worry. As long as it's darker than my 4th value, then I'm good to go. So you can see that it kind of looks a little bit smooth going from one value to the next. It's a very smooth way of shading, right? That's tonal. Any questions about tonal? Okay, the next technique we're going to use is called hatching. Has anybody ever used hatching before? Raise your hand and tell me, what is hatching? Hatching. Yonatan, do you remember what hatching is?
No, but we have used it. last year.
You used it before. So hatching is a really great way to get some texture in your work. Ori, are you watching the board?
Yep.
So hatching is great. You go in one direction, even if you don't like the band. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my pencil and very lightly draw lines going in one direction. Now it's okay that I'm not covering the whole space. That's what makes it look quite light. Okay, but as I move on, I could apply the exact same amount of pressure that I applied in my first value, but then I could stop, go back, and go over it again. And what you'll notice is the more lines there are, the darker it automatically starts to look. So I start with a little bit of lines, go back over and add some more lines if I want to.
And then cross hatches and do that.
Hang on, hang on. Hold those horses. All right, so I know you can assume what's going to happen as I continue going on. Somebody tell me just so I make sure that you understand what's going to happen. Only Yonatan knows. Maya.
It's gonna get dark.
It's going to get darker, okay? So I'm going to stop here because I don't want you guys sitting and watching me for too long, but you can see it's getting darker and darker. Cross-hatching is exactly like hatching, but anybody know what's the difference? What's the difference? What's the difference? Is your hand up, Kari? Ben?
Like we do up and like side.
Yeah. So if in hatching we made our lines go in one direction, and does it matter what direction they go in? Absolutely not. Once I've done one direction, I have to stop, and I have to go back in the other direction. So it's almost like a checkerboard. Okay? When I move on to add darker values, I can again go over, add more hatching, the darker the value gets. And somebody remind me again what's going to happen as I move further along. Talia? It's going to get darker. All right, so I'm going to stop here. Oops, I didn't label that one because I know you guys understand how it's going to get darker. That was cross-hatching. We're going to move on now to swirling. Swirling is my favorite shading technique because it's fun. Now everybody think about how you would draw curly hair or how you would draw a cloud. That's swirling. So have a look. What you get to do for swirling is simply almost like scribbling. Okay, but you're kind of going in swirls or circles. How many of you draw curly hair like this? Yeah. Okay, and as you continue, you can either press harder or what's the other option? More swirls, okay? So you just go over it again and again until it looks darker than your first value. What would be a really good, other than curly hair, how could I use swirling as a shading technique? What could I shade using swirling, bless you, that would look good? Zach? Clouds. What else? What else? Eitan?
Flowers?
Flowers, okay, sure. Maya?
Maybe like a sheep or something.
A shape, okay. What
No,
about...
instead of sheep.
Oh, a sheep. Yeah, definitely, because they're swirls. But you could use swirls in any kind of shape, even if it doesn't have that sort of swirly edge. If you think about it, you could shade mountains using swirls because it gives it a little bit of texture. Somebody remind me what texture is? What is texture? Ori?
It's like feel.
Yeah, how it feels or how it looks like it feels. Okay? So there is swirling. A lot of fun to do, and it really gets great texture. Our last technique is called stippling. Raise your hand. Has anybody ever heard of stippling before? Another word for stippling is called pointillism. Talia, you've heard of stippling? Have you? Yeah. A few minutes ago. Okay, great. So stippling is fun, but it's tough to do. And what it is dots.
What?
So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my pencil. Now this is my lightest spot, so I'm not going to do it very much, but I'm going to fill up this square or rectangle with some dots. Now you can't see the dots because I'm making them few and far between. How can I make my dots darker? How can I make each section darker? Talia?
By putting more and putting more pressure.
more dots and more pressure. So stippling, as you can imagine, takes quite a long time, and there are artists who only use dots or only use stippling or pointillism to create their paintings. So what's going to happen in my last value section there? What's going to happen, Adira? Yeah?
Can you just do one technique all the way and then start from the second box and go all the way?
Sure, you can start from a different box, sure. So when I get to my last box, what it's going to look like is they're all so close together.
A lot of dots.
That's what's going to make it really, really dark. So I'm going to stop here because I know you guys know how to do this now. Now, stippling is definitely requires a lot of patience, and it's something good to do when you're sort of have a lot of time and you can sit and listen to some good music. So we will turn some music on. You're going to do all 5 of these shading techniques. When you're done, I'm going to put a link on the board to a video that you can watch and then complete an exercise to create a cone, a 3D cone. And you're going to use the shading techniques that you've learned here. Okay? Yes.